Howdy y'all, how's it going? I'm back for another completely impromptu video that is probably just going to be another one of my rambles. But good news, we have Dolores here. She's here to stay, hopefully. She's been on the move lately. She might decide that she wants to go on another mission again, but we'll have to see. Who knows? She's being good right now. I feel like she's winding down. But anyways, I got off work and I got dressed, could go do stuff. I'm back now. I got Girl Scout cookies. I know I gave in. I usually don't interact with children that much, but it was my boss's kids and he asked me to buy his children's Thin Mints, and it's my boss, so I gave in. I don't really like cookies that much, but you know, whatever. We'll eat them. We'll eat them hot. So this video is probably going to be about my reasons for transitioning when I wasn't trans. Because I made my first video, I was kind of going back and watching that one again, and I gave a lot of reasons for why I detransitioned and kind of my transition leading up to that, but I feel like there's just more I could elaborate on me transitioning in the first place from a girl to a guy the first time, the first transition. I kind of feel like I transitioned twice almost, but I have a few notes, I'm not as prepared as I could be, so we'll have to see how this goes. But yeah, so let's get into it. I never really thought about transition until I was probably like 17 or 18. I honestly didn't really know what being transgender was, probably until I was like maybe 14 or 15, because at that point then I had went into high school, and the year after that, I think I was in 10th grade maybe, I had a friend and he was trans, but, and then I got kind of acquainted. You're distracting me. Oh, there she goes. There she goes. Why don't you stay with us for just a little bit longer, please? There we go. But yeah, so I had a friend in high school that was trans. That kind of introduced me to it almost, because before I didn't really know what being transgender was. I mean, I just hadn't really been exposed to anything like that. Like, I knew what gay and lesbian and like general LGBT stuff, but I hadn't really broadened my spectrum of knowledge up until that point. And so I had never really thought about any of that stuff until I was older. And I will say that that probably should have been my first red flag, because a lot of the times when I'm reading and watching other people's transition videos who are trans and still trans, right, I'm hearing a lot of people say that ever from a young age, right, something just felt off, you know, and some people knew that they didn't want to be a guy or a girl or whatnot. Like, they already knew that part, and some people didn't know that they just felt wrong some way. And why I say that that's probably should have been a red flag for me is because I never had anything like that. I mean, I didn't feel like normal, but I didn't feel like something was wrong in that sense. Like, I felt comfortable with my gender. So now that we've got that out of the way, good God, what are you doing? You're making this video a disaster. You just gonna chill there? Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I can do this. So sped up to, I was probably about 16 or 17 then. And I will say that an important factor in me deciding to transition was also, God, this video is going to be a disaster, was me struggling relationship-wise. I will say that, because I will say the main reason that I felt like I had to transition, or I felt like transition was right for me, was because of how I was struggling. God, Dottie. Okay, have fun. Sorry, I tried. And now she's off. Can you see her? I don't think you can see her. That's okay. But yeah, like, where was I? That's how I was struggling socially, right? And a big part of that was, and again, I will disclaimer, this is probably not going to be the same for everybody, but, and this is probably, this part of the story at least, probably going to be uniquely a problem for me, or something that I struggled with. And so, yeah, relationships. I, for a long time, like when I grew up, especially when I was younger, like 13, 14, I thought, oh, maybe I'm bisexual, because I didn't like guys. It wasn't that I liked girls, it's just I didn't feel like I liked guys. And then I, probably around 15 or 16, I was like, well, I don't really like guys at all, because that was what I had tried, tried dating, and I had a few, like, boyfriends that maybe lasted, like, a week, and so, and it had never lasted, and I was never, like, wanting anything with that, and so when I was 15 or 16, that's when I said, oh, I don't like guys, I must be gay, right? And while the whole time while I was thinking this, too, I will say that I never really sat back and thought, oh, well, I don't like guys, but do I like girls? And the answer is kind of no. But I didn't realize that. I was a stupid teenager. And so that was a struggle there. And then when I was 16 or 17 into 18, that's when I really had struggled with, when I realized that, oh, well, I don't like girls either. And I was like, oh, well, I don't like anybody. And after doing some research, I was like, oh, well, I might be asexual or aromantic, because I don't really want a relationship with anyone. And so then I identified as asexual for about, I don't know, probably like 2 years, because I just didn't know what else to say I was. Hold on, she's gonna crawl under my fridge, and then I won't be able to get her out. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Sorry, I had to quarantine her before she crawled under my fridge to never return again, and we can't not have Dolores, right? So yes, I went about for probably the next like 2 years just thinking that I was asexual because I just didn't have any other explanation for it. But I was never satisfied with that. I had issues. I don't go into details, but I just had issues with, wanting friends and wanting like really good friendships, but not wanting it to turn into a relationship, and that caused issues in and of itself. So I wasn't ever satisfied with. I was confused, and I just wasn't happy with how I had identified, and so I was already having issues with that. And speed up to when I think it was like 18 and a half, and you browse YouTube. I was watching like LGBT stuff, and I had gotten into the deep dark hole of YouTube, and eventually had just come across like a lot of transition videos. And from what I was seeing, let me rephrase that. I was watching these videos, and it just seemed like when these people transitioned, it really fixed a lot of their problems. And I mean, no shit, because they're trans and they transition, it's gonna fix their problems. But I ended up comparing it to my situation a lot and thinking, oh, well, what if I transition? Like what if I did that? That kind of thing. And it also didn't help that I was having other issues. But no, here's where the scatterbrain parts comes in. Oh, good God. But let me get into what I know now, because I have been talking to a therapist, and that's something that I didn't do when I thought I'm trans, I'm going to transition. I just kind of decided that for myself. I kind of self-diagnosed, which isn't generally a good idea. But I am talking to a therapist now, and she's just made me realize a lot of things about when I first thought that I was trans that I just didn't know at the time. For one, I think I was getting gender dysphoria confused with almost like a gender role dysphoria, because I wasn't ever unhappy with, I never felt wrong in my own body. And I know that people who are trans, I mean, that's dysphoria, right? And that's why I say that I never feel like I had dysphoria, because I was never upset with my body. I was upset, and I realize this now, but I didn't before, but now I realize that I was uncomfortable with how everybody else saw me. and like the expectations and what you were expected to do. And I'll elaborate on that. So I would like, it's like you always have your family members asking, oh, when are you gonna date? When are you gonna get a girlfriend or a boyfriend? And everybody was, you were expected to have a relationship. And that I struggled with a lot because I didn't really want one. And so that, especially growing up, really pushed into the idea in my head that, oh, well, everybody else does this, but I don't, so there must be something wrong with me, right? Something must be off. And not only that, but I wasn't really ever interested in having kids. And it's also something everybody's like, oh, just give it time. You'll change in time. Oh, you'll change your mind. And it was always so frustrating because I was like, no, I'm fairly certain that I don't like this or that. And it was just a culmination of all of these things, of how, and especially how I wasn't comfortable in a relationship, I'm not a romantic person. I don't like the cheesy, hand-holdy, you buy me flowers, I swear to God, unless they're like black roses or something, like that's kind of cool. But I was never comfortable with that. And of course, so when I got older and I started to really watch movies and TV and, talk to people and realized how women were really overly sexualized, and that also piled on to what I was uncomfortable with and struggling with. It just made me, in general, feel uncomfortable. And, I should be doing something that I don't want to do. I should be wanting a relationship. I'm a woman. I should want kids. I should be emotional. I think the last time that I really, broke down and cried, I think it was, 15. And before that, I was 13. I'm just not an emotional person. But all of these things that were kind of almost stacking against me, that everybody else said wasn't normal or wasn't almost wasn't natural. But I mean, it's not like it wasn't natural. It just wasn't, I felt like it wasn't normal. And so all of this whole time, while I was probably to 17 to 18, while I was at the peak of my frustration with right in the middle of wanting a relationship but not wanting one, and just wanting to fit in and just wanting to freaking just be normal, or to at least figure out what was wrong with me or what made me so different than everybody else. And as soon as I found what being transgender was, I mean, it's I almost latched onto it, because in my brain, and I know this is not what transgender is. This is me being stupid and mistaking all of these things for being transgender when it's not. So, I mean, I had really gone to think about, oh, well, maybe I'm trans, It's just well, guys, if I became a guy, guys aren't very emotional. I'm not emotional. I'm really competitive and aggressive. And it's oh, well, guys are like that, right? And these are not accurate statements either. This is what I was trying to tell myself to convince myself that I was trans so it would fix my problems. And all of these things, and I was oh, well, I don't want kids, I don't really want a relationship, and I was oh, well, guys, I think it's well, it's easier for a guy to get away with that kind of thing instead of a woman, because as a woman, you're expected to do and to and to want so many different things, right? And I feel guys aren't really given that much pressure. I mean, it's how often, I don't remember any of my guy cousins, getting asked, when are you gonna settle down? When are you gonna have kids? It's when are you gonna go out and start dating? I mean, maybe that one, but it's I mean, I never hear a guy get pressured to be more, why aren't you so, well, actually, I was gonna say that guys aren't pressured to be as emotional, but I'm not gonna say they aren't pressured, I'm gonna say they aren't expected to be as emotional. And in my head, I was thinking, oh, well, I mean, it would just be so much more socially acceptable for me to be who I am if I was a guy. And it wasn't ever about me wanting to be more myself. It was more about wanting to fit into what everybody else thought I should be. And I thought that I could do that better as a guy. I thought that if I transitioned to a guy, because I wasn't so emotional, because I didn't want I wasn't that romantic, I was really competitive, I was masculine, I like to do guy things, and I just thought that socially it would be easier for me if I transitioned, and I got that into my head and kind of convinced myself that that was going to fix a lot of the problems that I was having, a lot of why I was feeling so uncomfortable. And when in reality, I mean, that's not I mean, it was a short-term fix. I mean, it really was. It solved a lot of the, like, almost like emotional social issues that I was having, because yeah, I did transition to be a guy, and yeah, I didn't get asked as much, why, why aren't you in a relationship? When are you going to start dating? When are you going to have kids? All those things. And I didn't feel like I was being sexualized anymore. That part, I mean, it worked. I mean, I transitioned and I didn't feel so uncomfortable because of what other people thought I should be. I didn't feel like I had as many of the same expectations as I did when I was a woman. And those are what were really making me uncomfortable. But again, I will say, yes, I did transition. Yes, it solved a little bit of why I was being uncomfortable. But I wasn't actually trans, so I mean, it was a short-term fix, and then eventually you just kind of realize that, it's like, do I really want to do this for the rest of my life? I mean, going out and almost being transgender started eventually towards the end of my transition journey, started to feel more like a chore and something that I had to do. And that's, and that's when I really kind of had to sit back and think and just like, well, if I'm having these thoughts already, if I'm already thinking maybe I'm not trans, and if this is feeling like a chore, maybe I'm not trans. And that's when I really seriously sat down and thought about detransitioning. But yeah, I mean, and I think when you're transgender, to the best of my knowledge at least, I think if you're trans, transitioning should probably feel freeing, and should feel like you're being more like yourself. And when I transitioned, it was, and I know this now, but it was more like I was able to be somebody else. Like, oh, I mean, it was exciting to me. I was feeling so uncomfortable. So when I discovered this, I was like, oh, I get to choose a new name. I get to completely redesign myself. And just that whole aspect of almost like being able to become a different person. It was like an escape. I mean, it was like, oh, if I'm a different person, then I'm not going to have to deal with the problems that I'm dealing with now. And that's why I felt like I transitioned. And I don't think that if you're truly trans, it should be an escape. I think you're just becoming yourself. And so I feel like if you are transitioning, what I would recommend, and it's something that I saw in one of the comments on my videos, I want to say, and I thought, oh wow, I read it and I was like, oh, that seems like a really great idea, actually. I think, oh, my leg's falling asleep. I'm sitting on the ground too. I ditched the chair this time, I don't care. But really, if you can, I mean, I would honestly suggest maybe just taking like a week to yourself, like completely disconnect from society, from everybody else, from the internet, from everything, go camping or something. And I would really just start to think about what you want for yourself and make sure that you're not wanting to transition to please somebody else or to fit some sort of social expectation. Because, I mean, I know now that, yes, I'm a woman, but there's no textbook definition for what a woman is. I mean, I can be a woman and not be emotional and not want a relationship and want to do all the guy things and wear cologne. I mean, hell, I still have my Old Spice shampoo that I use. I'm not ditching that because I like it. And I can be a woman and I can like those things. And that's okay. I mean, that doesn't mean that I'm something I'm not. That doesn't mean that I'm a guy or anything like that, or maybe non-binary. I mean, you're allowed to like the things that you like, and oh gosh, my foot's falling asleep. But yeah, and that's not something that I learned until, recently. Hindsight's 20/20. And I think it's because I really kind of just allowed myself to grow up. I think I transitioned when I really didn't know what I wanted. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say just take some time to yourself before you decide to make it. Even if you're completely convinced that you're trans and you've known this forever, just before you do anything permanent, or decide that you're going to transition, I would really just take time to yourself, by yourself, and make sure that you're, like, at the end of the day, what are you happy with? Like, are you happy with yourself? Or when you're unplugged without all these social expectations, do you still want to transition? Or are you happy with yourself? Because, I mean, I think if I had pictured myself just living in like a cabin in the woods by myself for all of eternity without any sort of social expectations of what I should be doing and should not be doing, I don't think I would have been nearly really as bothered about transitioning as I was. Because, I mean, at the end of the day, I was happy with what I looked like. I was happy with my body. I just wasn't happy with how my body was seen. And I feel like that maybe that's something that a lot of younger people are struggling with, because, I mean, I feel like, yeah, I mean, women are very sexualized, and especially, I think girls are especially going to be sensitive to that if they're already uncomfortable. But, I mean, I feel like just give yourself a lot of time, because I'm 21, and I didn't realize that I didn't want to be trans for 2 years, almost. It took me 2 years to realize that. So, I mean, if you're confused, it's okay. Just make for damn sure that you are transitioning to make yourself happy, not because you're uncomfortable with how other people see you. I mean, if you're uncomfortable with your body and you feel like transitioning would make you more of yourself, you know, not putting on a mask, then all the power to you. And especially talk to a therapist, to somebody professional, because sometimes it's really good to get somebody else's opinion, you know, like somebody else looking from the outside in, you know, they might be able to see things that you're not seeing, or maybe explain things to you, or ask the questions that you just don't think to ask yourself at the time. I mean, you're only doing yourself a favor. I mean, the only person really that you're hurting if you decide to just jump into something without really deciding if it's what you want to do is yourself. I mean, because if you decide you're trans and maybe you've made a mistake and maybe you're not actually trans, where you're having some different issues, the only person you're really going to hurt is yourself, because you're just going to realize that later on down the line, and maybe you've been on hormones for 2 months, or maybe you've been on hormones for 20 years. I don't think 20 years, maybe like 2 years, 2 or 3 years. But just do yourself a favor and really talk to someone before you make these decisions, and don't make them lightly. Just make sure that you're doing right by you. I mean, like I said, the only person at the end of the day that you have to make happy is yourself. So, I mean, like I said, don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it because you feel like it would be easier, you know, or socially people would like you more, or whatnot, or because it's a trend. I mean, don't convince yourself you're trans. That's something that I did, and I didn't realize I was doing it. I was looking at all these videos, and I was trying to find comparisons between me and them, because I wanted so badly for that to be the answer. But, I mean, let the answers really come to you. I mean, I'd imagine it'd be like a light bulb, you know? It's just like, oh, this would fix everything, you know? I mean, this is something I really want to do, you know? Don't rush in to everything. Just make yourself happy in whatever form that takes, you know? Wear a freaking unicorn horn and drag makeup for the rest of your life if that makes you happy. Screw what anybody else says. Don't do it for anybody else but you. So, yeah, that's my more in-depth reason on why I transitioned and why I was wrong about it. So, yeah, I think I'm gonna go eat some of my Girl Scout cookies and maybe pie. I'm feeling pie. I'm hungry. So, yeah, let me know what y'all think. I know my story situation is not gonna be the same for everyone, I know, and neither is yours. Probably everybody's unique. I mean, I don't think you'll ever find a YouTube video and see like an exact parallel for yourself, like, oh, that's exactly my situation. I mean, everybody's unique. But, okay, end of my rant. I gotta go check on Dolores again, make sure she's not taking a massive dump on my carpet like she did right before I started recording. Let me mention that. She was literally on the floor right next to me before I started recording, and I heard her fart. You've never heard a more disgusting noise until you've heard a lizard fart. I swear to God, it's disgusting. And I turned over, and she let out the biggest dump I've ever seen. So, yeah, at least she did it before I started recording, and not while she was sitting on me. Although it would have been funny and I would have got it on camera. But oh well, next time. Alrighty. Okay, see ya.